Sorry, y'all, no drama today. It is video essay time. Capitalism is bad. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please. This is a topic that's a little hard to discuss. Discrimination against autistic individuals is very different from other groups. The best way I could describe it is as passive discrimination. I don't mean autistic people face less discrimination. I mean, look at the stats for that. Higher rates of physical and mental issues, a significantly lower life expectancy even for high-functioning individuals, and one of the most disturbing statistics, over 9 times more likely to die by suicide. Midlife crisis in 11 years. Woo! When I say passive discrimination, I mean autistic people aren't even viewed as a group to discriminate against. For example, queer people face blatant and active discrimination, be it employment, marriage, or just plain old, tried and tested queerphobia. It's been great recently. Woo! This is because politicians of a certain political party have it in their best interests to rile up voters to get political capital. That's politics 101. Power is everything. Us versus them. And we see this sentiment in varying degrees with several other groups as well. Black people in the US are the first group that comes to mind. They tend to get shafted in a lot of stuff, but again, it tends to be active and incredibly blatant. But if you want to learn more about that stuff, I am probably not the best guy for it. I am here to cover a different perspective. Autism. It's not very fun. It leads to many problems, including difficulty with social interaction, hand-eye coordination, and learning issues. It is a spectrum as well, so all of this can vary in severity, from nearly fully manageable to utterly debilitating. And the vast majority of autistic people tend to be directly in the middle. More successful autists have learned to hide the more unsavory traits and blend into standard society. Others on the lower end of the spectrum physically cannot. Now, a bit off topic, but do you like food? Do you like the way it feels in your hand? How it tastes? Now tell me, how do you get food? You get it with cash, right? Moolah, that sweet green dough. And you know, some people like to do this thing called not fucking starving to death. And to achieve that lofty goal, in this system, you need a job. Now, do you notice a little discrepancy between these two numbers? The data has been a little spotty to find, but from what I've read, around 80% of autistic people are unemployed. And that's bad if, you know, you want food in your mouth, or to get anything for leisure, a place to live, any basic necessities. Employment best represents the fork in the road when it comes to discrimination against autistic people. There was a study done with resumes. Researchers sent out several resumes in 2 groups. One group had a white-sounding name, and the other group had a black-sounding name. The resumes that were in the white-sounding name group were over 50% more likely to get called in for a job interview compared to the black-sounding name group. Fairly blatant and obvious racism. It's not quite the same with autistic people. There is no resume with Charles Asperger on it. I'm not called a retard on the street. That's not how ableism works. It's much better hidden, and the reason for discrimination is more practical. See, the goal of a company is to run efficiently. It's to generate the most amount of money. And to run efficiently, you need efficient workers. And unfortunately, autism tends not to embody that. Learning issues can make training hard, let alone getting a degree. Now tack social problems onto that, and we have a blueprint for a worker that will contribute less per dollar you pay them compared to their non-autistic counterparts. It's the literal embodiment of the phrase, it's not personal, it's just business. Because it's really not the autism that gets discriminated against, it's the cost of hiring autistic people, an inefficient use of funds. You can see how this can cause some ripple effects. It's even worse if you're unemployed. self-employed. 70% of autistic people deal with mental health issues, and if you can't afford a therapist because those issues prevent you from working, well, it can have quite deadly consequences. And the worst part is, autism stacks with other groups that are discriminated against. Are you black? Stack that shit. Trans? Stack that shit. Poor? Stack that shit twice. It's like the world's worst video game multiplier. And it's a little weird as well. Unlike those two other groups, autistic people aren't really targeted as individuals. There's no real push to pass legislation that will specifically fuck over autistic folks. Sure, you'll have a couple of politicians that will use autistic people as a tool to fight against stuff. Vaccines are the first thing that comes to mind. And it's shitty being called a defect, but there are bigger concerns. Cutting funding to social services is a much more tangible threat. But again, it's not to fuck over autistic people in particular, it's for the corpos. So even without being specifically targeted, autistic people still manage to get boned on all sorts of economic and social issues. And the thing that makes this worse is that in a purely economical sense, this is justified. Profit above all else. For it's not individuals that perpetrate this, but the system around them. A system that values efficiency over the lives of the very people that live in it. So please keep that in mind, that this stat isn't all self-inflicted. Outro time. Well, that was a little bit of a depressing video, but there are a lot of misconceptions about autism, given by a lot of stupid fucking people on a certain stupid fucking website that should be beaten with sticks. I'll talk more about this issue in the future, hopefully. To end this video on a slightly positive note, autistic people are nearly 2 times more likely to be self-employed. So if a job won't hire you, you make your own job. Adaption, you know? Well, I'm off.